eerie morning or magical midnight, wherever, whenever you may be, across the dimensions or around the vibrations. I'm Tillie Treadwell, and oh, have I got a show for you. Won't you join us on The Weird Walk Home? Hello, everyone. I'm Tillie Treadwell, and tonight I have with me Preston Dennett. Hi, Preston. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, Tillie. Thanks for having me on
Aw,
the show.
of course, my pleasure. Um, for people who may not know who you are, could you please tell us who you are and your life journey, especially as it relates to the paranormal,
My life journey. Okay.
if you don't mind?
No, not at all. Uh, I am the fifth of six kids. So we were a big family who moved out to California when I was kids from Illinois.
Wow.
And I was skeptical of all things paranormal. And I thought everyone in my family was.
Hmm.
And for the most part, they were. But when I was about, let's see, about 13 or 14, my older brother Marco, who was probably around 19 years old, came running into the house one evening and said, "I saw a UFO." And I just kind of looked at him and shook my head.
Hmm.
I was very into science starting at a young age, and I know how far away the stars are.
Hmm.
And certainly with our own technology, there's just no way we could ever visit there. So I assumed that, ETs certainly couldn't. Uh, and I just didn't believe him. I didn't believe in UFOs. I didn't believe in life after death or ghosts or anything like that.
Oh, wow. So you were completely a disbeliever.
Yeah, I was a materialist. If I couldn't see it, it didn't exist.
That's a great word for it. I forgot, but yeah, that's the technical term for it.
Yeah, and, of course, that did all change. It was some years later. I was 21 years old, still pretty young.
Mhm.
This was 1986, November 17. I'll never forget that day because on the news came this report about a sighting over Alaska. It's very famous in the UFO community. A jet airliner saw a UFO, the whole crew rather, and it was on their radar. It tracked their plane for almost an hour. It's
Really?
an amazing sighting. And I remember just looking at this pilot because they showed his picture, thinking,
Mhm.
well, that poor man, he saw a reflection off the ice cap. They weren't even flying over the ice cap. This is what I'm thinking. And I just remember like he's probably going to lose his job over this because that is irresponsible to report a UFO. He did end up
Oh,
losing his job. I found out later.
oh,
uh,
that's a shame. Mhm.
yeah, well, he was grounded. He was later able to fly again. But
Okay.
that's when I remembered Mark, my older brother, had said he'd seen a UFO, and just kind of jokingly, I asked him about it. Like,
Uh,
you thought you saw one of these, right? Not really saying you idiot, but thinking it.
right, right.
And
Like that was your perception.
right, I'm like, you believe you saw one. So that's
Hmm.
kind of what I asked him. He's like, no,
Yes.
I did. I'm like, okay, well, tell me what you saw. And he described this amazing sighting, and he was driving with his two friends, Phil and Greg, along Reseda Boulevard, which I know well, certainly now. It's a busy street outside
Mhm.
of LA. And
Mhm.
they saw this metallic disc, had colored lights on it, a dome on top, was silent. It was at treetop level. It was like a few hundred feet from their car. And they
Oh,
chased it down the road. Yeah. So
wow.
when he told me this, I'm like, Mark, you got to be kidding me. He's like, no,
Yeah.
no. He's like, I'm being totally honest. I knew he was. He's my brother. He's
Yeah,
not
of
going to
course.
lie. And it was clear he wasn't misperceiving or hoaxing or anything like this. So I'm like, huh. He's like, talk to Phil, talk to Greg, my friends. They'll talk to you. They would love to talk to you.
Yeah,
And so
okay.
I did. And they confirmed everything. And that's when my house of cards fell because I found out that his girlfriend, future wife,
Mhm.
had seen ETs when she was a little girl. Full
It
on.
does tend to run in families, and it does tend to affect the spouses of the family line. Yeah,
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
makes.
and it's so in my family because my other brother, his wife,
Mm-hmm.
soon, well, girlfriend, but soon to be wife, had also seen a UFO with her friends. I ended up talking to one of them at least, and she saw gray ETs
Mm-hmm.
as well when she was in college. And I had a friend, a
Uh-huh.
pilot, who saw a UFO. She had a friend with her. All these people had witnesses with them, which kind of
Okay.
really surprised me. I thought everyone who sees a UFO is alone and they're out in the middle of nowhere and
Yeah.
it's just an anomalous light. No, these were, solid craft. I brought it up at work. I worked at a business office and worked there for 35 years. I ended up
Okay.
getting a lot of witnesses from there. But yeah, two or three people there were like, "Oh yeah." One lady says, "Me and my whole family saw a UFO."
Mhm.
And in walks Dorothy, who I love because she's so outgoing and unfiltered and just funny. She's like, "One followed me home from the library." And she ended up having missing time. She, her best friend, and her mom. So that's what got me into this. That's when I
Uh,
joined MUFON. If you know what
uh-huh.
the MUFON is, Mutual UFO Network.
I work with Chris Harmon pretty often these days, actually.
Oh wow. All
Yeah,
right.
the guy
Yeah.
that hooked us up, actually.
Oh, very cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that I found MUFON probably a year into this, bought every book I could find. When I joined MUFON, I'm like, okay, I want to subscribe to your journal, and you know what? Give me all your back journals. I had to pay for them, of course, but
Of
I
course,
got
of course.
all the journals back to 1960, whatever it was, 67, I
Oh.
think.
Hmm.
I was I dived into the deep end, dove into the deep end.
Yeah, yeah, Dove.
But
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
became a field investigator. Took their test, which was really hard, actually. It was
Chris
not,
did tell me some of the details. It sounds intimidating. I don't think I'd ever be able to pass it, to be honest.
they said it's a take-home test. I'm like, this is going to be easy. Take-home test. Come on. This was before the internet. So you couldn't just, look every answer
Yeah.
up. You had to
Yep.
go, and I did have to go to the library because there were questions. I was in college at the time taking
Mhm.
meteorology. So that was lucky because there was all these
Aw.
questions on weather and clouds.
Uh-huh.
There's like 20 different kinds of clouds. You wouldn't think so, but there
Right.
is. And of course,
Right.
photography and all these different questions. I did really well because I was, I love science. I love tests. I'm crazy.
Yeah,
I always
yeah.
loved but that's yeah, I started buying every book, started interviewing people formally because my dad was in the film industry and he had access to this colonel who said he worked with Project Blue Book or next door to it, actually.
What?
Yeah. Lieutenant Colonel Duncan Wilmar. It's like, you can interview him if you want. And I'm just, I'm still 19 years old. Or no, yeah, let me think for a second. I was 21,
Mm,
but a
mhm.
young 21. I
I
really
guess
was. If you know what I mean. I
I
was,
do. I absolutely do.
I hadn't
Oh,
really gone out in the world that much. I,
yeah.
I was still
Yeah.
living at home. But yeah, I
Hmm.
interviewed him and it was a real disappointment, honestly,
What
because
happened?
yeah, I mean, he basically tried to convince me that UFOs weren't real. And I'm like, you are out of your mind. He's like, they're all snake oil salesmen. If you believe in UFOs, you're uneducated. And I'm like, this guy is out of his mind. He tried to pull me
Yeah.
off the subject. So
Really?
he was towing the party line for sure. And I'm
Ooh.
like, well, I learned a few things. Because I came into this naive. Who knew that there was a government cover up funded by our tax dollars?
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting that you interviewed this guy, you have his name, and this is what you're telling us, that there is a cover up. I completely agree. And I think that where there are um, agents that are not covering it up in the government or parallel to the government, there's a lot of misinformation going around out there in order to throw people off of the path and downplay what seems to be the truth about these things. And I think it's because materialism in a lot of ways it's very profitable, but it also gives the average human person a lot of comfort and therefore makes it makes everyone more manageable. At least this is my understanding and my experience. But what do you think?
Well, I love that word you use, manageable. I think that's hitting it right on the head, because that's, I think,
Yeah.
exactly what they're trying to do, is
Yeah.
steer the narrative. And
Mm-hmm.
I bought into it. Even, I was a victim, I'll say that, of the cover up, not believing in this at all, and
Yeah.
found that it was real, and still kind of
Yeah.
bought into the fact that, oh, they're here to invade, they're going to take over, they're experimenting on people, it's
Yeah.
bad for us, which, took me a year of research and really interviewing people myself who were contactees to really come around to what's going on. And I found out pretty quick that no, this is not a nefarious thing. This is
Yeah.
actually it's good news for humanity. They're
Mhm.
really trying hard, the ETs, to wake us up to who we are, our own abilities, the
Mhm.
fact that we're destroying the planet and at war with each other and covering
Yeah.
things up. And their whole mission is one of, I found this out from firsthand cases. It's all about healing. That was my first book, about
Hmm.
healing cases, which I wrote after 10 years of research because I really wanted to dig in before I started,
Yeah.
talking about this publicly. I was
Yeah.
writing articles, but I was going to write an article about healing cases because I just interviewed this lady who was healed of a cyst.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, it was amazing. She's such a neat lady. She actually showed me UFOs. One came, I was interviewing her, I recorded the interview, and she's telling me all these amazing stories, which were just like a lot for me to take.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
that's when her ETs, if I can call them that, her contacts came down for me and actually gave me a telepathic message. No kidding. I was in my condo where I just moved out, not too, 3 or 4 years earlier. And I was transcribing the interview that I'd done with her because I record all my interviews. I want to get things accurate.
Sure.
And,
Sure.
and she was just describing, like, the hybrid babies and actually striking out and hitting one of the ETs. And that's when I stopped. I remember I leaned back in my chair. I'm like, is this lady for real? I know she is. She's sincere. She doesn't want her name used. She's not seeking
Yeah.
publicity.
Yeah. There's no profit there.
All right. There sure isn't.
Right.
But that's when I got this really strong impulse, which was basically go out onto the roof, go onto the roof, go to the roof, go to the roof, go to the roof. I'm like, I'm not doing that. But it got so strong that I couldn't resist. You're not allowed on the roof of the condo. You're not supposed
Right.
to go up there. It's off limits.
Oh gosh.
But I
I'm
broke the
so sorry.
rules.
Just 1 second, please, hon. Oh, I'm so sorry. My cat was into something that she should not have been at all. Please continue.
No worries. I have a cat too, so
Okay, so
I
you
know.
get it. Yeah.
So yeah, I just got this really strong impulse to go onto the roof of my condo,
Mhm.
which is off limits, and I'm a good boy, so I don't break the rules. But I did because I couldn't help it. And
Yeah.
I grabbed my glasses, which is really unusual because I really only use them for driving. I'm slightly
Mm.
nearsighted. I don't need them legally, but
Uh-huh.
for whatever reason, I grabbed them and I went onto the roof of the condo. And Tillie, I wasn't up there maybe 10 or 20 seconds, looking to the north. And, there's a little parking lot next to the condo. There's the LA River, which is another
Yeah.
100 feet, and another street with an apartment building. Right over that apartment building, at
Mhm.
treetop level, literally, this bright, fiery orange oval appears.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was clearly unusual because it was all fiery and oval and probably 10, maybe 20 feet across. It was big.
Okay.
And it blasted me with a message. Not kidding. I've never had this.
Mhm.
It said, it's us. We're Wendy's ETs. We're real. She's telling the truth. You don't believe? Watch this. We'll prove it. And
Yeah.
it wasn't in words. It was just this boom message, which was very clear.
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
and then it started back and forth. It went boom, 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 and then started going down, down, down to where I could see that it was,
Mhm.
behind the trees there.
Mhm.
So I could tell exactly how far away it was and that it wasn't a distant object.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it
So
disappeared.
Okay. When you were getting the message, the telepathic message, I'm really curious. Was it in your voice? Was it someone else's voice? Or was it voiceless? Was it just like a knowledge drop?
Knowledge drop, full
Okay.
on, no voice, which I've never really gotten because I've had a few other instances since then.
Hmm.
But it was just a knowing, but it was super crystal clear. I mean, there was
Yeah,
no mistaking it. I
right.
knew it was her ETs. They said it. And I just don't know how to describe it other than a knowing, just a
Mhm.
complete drop. You might call it a download. I've heard that term.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But yeah, I called her up. I remember I called her up so excited. She's like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "You're not going to believe it." And she's like, "Oh, I told you I was telling the truth." I'm like, "Well, I know you were, but."
Now I have personal proof.
Right.
Yeah. That's wild.
It was so
So
cool.
it is
So
so
cool.
it is so cool. I bet it was. For me, every non-human person that I've ever met has communicated instantaneously through voiceless information drops, images, music, like direct mind-to-mind music. Um, you could say mind movies, even things like that. And I always ask people how they communicated because I find it really interesting in that it seems like the most intimate um, communications between non-human people and human people are these instantaneous, voiceless knowledge drops, but that if they're trying to be kind and gentle towards a human person, they will either use that person's own voice or they'll pretend to be like someone's mom or something giving that person advice or a tip or something of that nature, and then these non-human people will take no credit for it whatsoever. It's just really interesting to me, you know.
I heard that. I've talked to a lot of people, and one guy was he's from Netherlands, I think and they spoke to him in his native language, saying, "Don't be afraid. You
Yes.
you won't be harmed. No harm will
Yeah.
come to you." They'll speak to you in your native language, and they will
Mhm.
speak in words
Mhm.
telepathically to people, but I've heard all variations of it. And a lot of people do describe just a knowing.
Yeah.
And Wendy could talk to them as a conversational way, the lady who was healed.
Yeah.
And after I heard she was healed, I thought, I'm going to write an article about her healing case and the
Yep.
others that I knew in the literature. There was a police officer in Damon, Texas, who was healed of a cut on his hand.
Uh,
There was a Peruvian customs official who walked out onto his veranda. A UFO was way the heck up there. It struck him with a violet beam of light and get this, cured him of
uh,
rheumatism and nearsightedness.
really? All right.
Yes. I knew another case of a little kid, Chuck Doyle, in Florence, Kentucky, who was
Oh.
healed of a head cold after being struck by a beam
What?
of light.
Beat me up, Scotty.
So I knew about a half dozen cases. So I surveyed the literature, diving a little bit deeper. I found 30 cases right off the bat. Dug a little deeper, and I found like 50, and then 70. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should
Mhm.
write a book. And I ended up finding over 100 cases. I've since found 300. I re-released that book not too long ago. The Healing Power of UFOs. They are definitely here to heal us. And I've got a list of things healed that covers most, well, I can't say most, but certainly it's an exhaustive list.
Sure.
Real
So,
quick, I looked up, the top 10 causes of death in the United States. They've healed every single one of them, every darn one.
oh, I completely believe you on that. So you say that they are here, and I hear you saying this in a very general, maybe all-encompassing way. Do you think that there are any non-human people who wish to do human beings and or humanity harm?
Well, in a trick question kind of way, I'll say yes, but I don't think they're visiting us. I don't think they have the capacity to leave their planet. I think there are other people out there like us here on Earth who
Mhm.
are harming themselves and each other
Oh
and who
yeah.
have not risen to that level of spiritual, ethical, and moral maturity that anyone who can cross, interstellar distances has elevated themselves beyond that. No, I don't think ETs really at all are here to hurt us. And it's a very tricky and sensitive question for some people because people will say, well, I had a negative encounter. How can you say this?
Yeah, yeah,
Right. So I'll
yeah.
interview them and say, well, what exactly happened to you? And what I
Right,
found is it can be very frightening for people.
right.
And when you're in abject terror and this is scaring the pants off of you, you're
Yeah.
having nightmares and insomnia and fear of intruders and feel like this is being done against your will, you can interpret this very easily as negative. And
Amen.
for
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, that to me, in a lot of these cases, it seems like it's more the emotional response that is um perceiving these events as harmful and negative, but it doesn't seem to be that objectively that is the case, unless you count the emotional harm. Does that make sense?
yeah, well, what I found is, when someone's taken on board and they're having a real hard time with it, that's when they will have missing time and they probably won't go any farther than that. They're like, this was bad. I didn't like it. I
Yeah.
remembered being laid out and examined. And that's the hardest part for people
Mhm.
because this is when people really have a lot of fear. No one likes
Yeah.
going to the doctor anyway. And the worst I hear is the physical exam because some
Right.
people do experience pain, which I don't think is being intentionally put on people because you can hurt
Right.
a person by just touching them if they're
Right.
scared. They're like, ah,
Right.
I just touched you. Ask any
Exactly.
nurse or doctor about this, and they'll tell you.
Yeah,
How
it's a real thing. Yeah.
yeah, but there's no, I've interviewed hundreds of people now, and I don't have a single case of what I would call torture or sadistic behavior or evil ETs going, I want to scare you and hurt you. No, that's not what's happening at all. When someone's
Okay.
taken on board, it follows a pretty set pattern. Yes, you are physically
Yeah.
examined. This is
Yeah.
often we are healed. And if
Mhm.
you can react in a way with any calmness whatsoever, they will
Right.
always tell you, no, don't be afraid. We're not here to hurt you. No harm will come to you. Have no fear. Or
Yeah.
over and over. And then they will give you a tour of the craft. This is
Right.
documented by researcher after researcher after researcher.
I've
Thomas
heard that
Bullard.
many times. Mhm.
They'll give you a tour. They'll take you to the engine room. It's very
Yes.
cool. They'll take you to the control room and sit you down in the seat. And
Yes.
in some cases, they'll actually teach you how to fly the craft.
Right.
I have a recent book called Symmetry, which is
Mhm.
all about one lady's experiences, Dolly Saffron.
Mhm.
Great witness, a retired nurse, a Department of
Oh,
Defense employee, a zookeeper, a lifeguard, a good person. And they taught her how to fly the craft. I mean, they seriously taught her. She's a fully
okay.
conscious contactee. She doesn't have missing time. She broke through that fear barrier, which is a hard thing for some people to do.
Sure.
But yeah, their mission is one of warning people because when you get a message, it's going to be something along the lines of, why are you messing around with nuclear power? Don't you
Yeah. Yeah.
realize you have the capacity to kill yourselves, everybody on this planet, all life on this planet?
Yeah.
They're very concerned about how we treat ourselves and each other, the destruction of the environment,
Yes.
greed, corruption.
Yeah.
This is what they always talk about, and our slow level of spiritual evolution or progress. They're really trying to wake us up psychically.
I agree with all of that. Um, and so I'm very honest with people here that I have a very low ego content and very low emotional content. So for me, most common social and emotional responses here don't make any kind of sense. And I have heard all of my non-human friends and the non-human people in general that I've met say the very same types of things, like that they don't understand why human people are so reactive a lot of the times. And then other non-human people have said, hey, we want to help humanity become less emotional and reactive and selfish so that more harmony can be brought about. And all of my experiences are lining up with exactly what you're saying in a lot of ways. Except I do wonder, so do you think that all of these non-human people, I don't like to call them ETs for myself, do you think that they are all physical and that they're all really coming from other planets? Or do you think that there is any kind of possibility that they are intervibrational and or interdimensional?
Good question.
I'm
There's a
sorry.
lot of there's a lot of stuff that gets put under the UFO umbrella that
Mhm,
perhaps doesn't belong there, because we have spirits, we have Bigfoot, we have nature spirits, we have
sure.
all kinds of little people in every culture who are probably more better defined as, I don't know, crypto terrestrials. They've lived here and they are in a different dimensional space.
Mhm.
Elves and fairies and
Yeah.
things like gnomes and kobolds, which are
And the
absolutely
JFK.
real.
Mhm,
I've interviewed people who've seen these things. Those are real. They're not ETs. But I
right.
am convinced, and I think the evidence speaks towards this, that we are dealing with people like us, physical beings, and who do live on a planet, but have mastered interdimensionality, or understand and are able to utilize their own interdimensional aspects. Because we
Oh,
ourselves are interdimensional. We truly are. We can levitate. We can teleport. We can do telekinesis. We can do astral projection, go to the other side. The saints could bilocate. People who get really spiritually developed can do all the things we see with ETs, which are causing people to say, oh, well, maybe they're interdimensional. Well, yeah, but who isn't? We're all interdimensional,
okay.
all all entities. So I don't think it precludes, interdimensionality does not preclude them being ETs. I think
Okay.
they're physical, because people are taken into these craft and they're not in their bedroom. Where are
Yeah.
they?
Oh,
No.
I agree. I just a lot of people are very black and white either or about this, so I was just curious about how you saw it and experienced it. Um, because
Well,
for
yeah,
me,
I mean,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, there are light beings too. There are ETs who I think are
Yeah.
probably moved beyond the physical and can come down and affect the physical environment.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yeah, yeah,
craft themselves, many contactees have told me this, are alive, embodied. They
I
are
believe that.
themselves living beings,
Yes.
not in quite the way we would think of it, but are embodied. Yeah, so it's
Oh,
confusing for people.
mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I think it's a physical phenomena, because people are being implanted, they're being healed, they're being
I
taken on board the craft, they're caught on radar, they're leaving landing traces. We know that they're affecting the environment physically. It's hard for me to walk away from that idea that, there are other people out there, because who are we? We're on a planet. We know this. So I think that it's inescapable that there are others out there on other planets, and we're seeing that.
sure. So, you speak in terms of other planets and the distance of stars and things of that nature. Um, I mean this in the most respectful way because I'm just curious. There's no
Sure.
kind of disrespect meant in this at all. Okay. How can you know for sure and state it as a complete fact that we are on a planet and that the stars are what they are and that they are so far away when you're relying on other people to define what a planet is and everything that you're saying is all secondhand as to like the nature of like this physical reality. Does that make kind of sense to you? Like my question?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think we
Okay.
do at some point, we all gather knowledge. And knowledge comes solely, true experiential knowledge comes solely from experience. So I know what I know. I can walk on the ground and feel the sand in my toes, and I
Yes.
can see the stars. I know I think, therefore I am type of thing. I loved philosophy and college. So I was very into that, but I'm also into science. And science has been able to build a worldview that is repeatedly testable. I think there's no doubt that we are on a planet. I think we've got enough evidence of that. Not
Okay.
to say that there's all kinds of questions surrounding reality itself.
Sure.
But
Okay.
I think that we've certainly built our level of knowledge as a species, as humanity, to a certain level where it's indisputable. The Earth is not flat. I think we know this. Uh, and I think just from, if you study basic science 101, you can build a pretty accurate picture of what's going on.
So you don't think that there's any way that the people who are putting together these worldviews for the public to consume could be lying, they could be wrong in general, misled? You don't think that there's any chance of that?
Wouldn't say that. Never would I say that, because science evolves over the years.
Gotcha.
We used to think that we were, the sun was revolving around us. We're continually building on that. And occasionally there are monumental discoveries that change everything.
Yeah.
So we're always building up our knowledge for sure. There are people out there who say, oh, we're living in a matrix. I'm like, okay, let's
Mhm.
consider this as a theory. Where's your evidence for this? Show me. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
certainly
Oh, yeah.
willing to consider all these things.
Cool.
But, I got really into astral projection as well. So, and I did that experientially, because you can tell someone, someone can tell you, oh, I've been out of my body. And you can be like, well, good for you. That's interesting. But, I don't know that that's true. But if you can do it yourself, and you can rise up above the planet and look back down and see it is a globe, you know, you
Well,
know
what
that
if,
there's life after death,
okay.
these sort of things. So,
I so appreciate you helping me with this with my line of logic because I I I just feel a lot of confusion and a lot of mistrust. I don't believe that the earth is necessarily like a ball globe. Not because it's not a possibility. I think it absolutely is. I just think that the lies from places like NASA or the misinformation and like you said, the government cover up that even you discovered, how can I actually trust this? And then on top of that, even if I astrally project or I believe that I have, what if my eyes are deceiving me somehow? Or what if it's all just a grand, you could say, quantum illusion that I'm seeing what I want to see or what I think should be. Does that make sense?
well, you're kind of talking about the Heisenberg principle,
Yeah, yeah.
or solipsism. There's this is all getting very deep and philosophical,
I'm so
which
sorry.
no, that's awesome. I love it.
Okay. Okay.
But at some point, I think we have to trust our own senses. We have to trust ourselves.
Okay.
We have to learn discernment. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, I totally agree with you. We are steeped in lies. This
Oh,
in the UFO field, especially, it's horrendous. There are
it's an
so much.
embarrassment, in
It,
my
it's
opinion. Mhm.
it's shocking when you find out, like, well, half the stuff out there isn't true. And no, I don't trust our governments really at all about certainly the UFO subject. But you can
Yeah.
look back into science, like they knew the Earth was round way back when Archimedes, or they were putting poles in different locations and measuring the shadow, and they were able to measure the size of the Earth a long time ago. The scientists have known it's a globe for a very long time. Do I trust NASA about what we found on the moon? I
Yeah.
don't. I really don't. I think we went there.
Okay.
I've certainly researched it in depth, but I think we found stuff up there that they're covering up. Uh,
Gotcha. Okay.
so I think that there's levels of lies that we have to sift through, and it's a real hard job. That's,
Yeah.
and I always tell people, don't believe our governments on this subject of UFOs, because we know they're lying. The cover up is demonstrable. We know that there are paid disinformants. We know this. We've caught them. We've got the documents. If you want to know the truth about UFOs,
Sure.
what I always challenge people is start with your family, start with your friends, your coworkers, your circle. These are people
Hey.
you love and trust. Ask
Mhm.
them. You know,
Exactly.
if you
Yes.
really want to see a UFO, because I was interviewing all these people. it's great, Mark, that my brother, you saw a UFO, but I want to see one. Then I'll know. And I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
saw a ghost too, because whenever I did a bunch of ghost research. It's all connected.
I agree.
And I wanted to see a ghost. So I went to haunted places until I did. And I
Cool.
saw, because I'm the kind of guy who wants to see it himself. I want to know. I don't want to just believe. There's a huge gap between belief and knowledge.
Sure. So, how do you know 100% sure that the government isn't heavily influencing or controlling scientists, or that some other faction isn't controlling the scientists that you rely on for your information? And again, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm genuinely trying to understand, because what I like about you is that you have a completely different worldview than I do. You have a lot more trust in humanity than what I do. And so for me, it helps to broaden my mind to hear what other people think and say and how they reason. And also, I could be wrong with how mistrustful I am. So your input is really helpful for me, you know?
No, I don't think you're wrong one bit. When I found out UFOs were real, I was vandalized. My belief system was
Oh,
shattered.
yeah, I'm
And
so
I
sorry.
couldn't trust anybody. And
Okay.
ironically, I became more skeptical of all things. So when someone said, I saw a UFO, I'm like, well, sure you did, because I've been lied to so long. I don't believe it. I couldn't believe anybody for a long time.
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
really had to sort of dig deep and study and learn how to, you know, gather knowledge.
Gotcha.
No, I don't think that there are, I mean, there are many scientists out there who I don't trust. I really don't. I look at Neil deGrasse Tyson going on TV and saying UFOs aren't real. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
have you looked at the evidence? Because I can
Yeah.
go down all the evidence and it's there. And skeptics and debunkers don't look at the evidence. And when I
Sure.
start pointing out the evidence to you, they will attack the researcher. No, they'll attack you personally. And
Oh,
that's not cool. It's not about me at all. It's
no.
about evidence.
I,
Explain this to me.
I
If
agree.
so, you know, I I'm certain about what I know, and
Okay.
I try not to believe anything. I think it's inevitable to a certain extent that we build up a belief system. But mine
Sure.
was shattered so hard. I mean, it really was that I had to, because not only did I find out UFOs were real, I didn't believe in ghosts. I did not
Yeah.
believe you could go out of your body, that
Yeah.
there was life after death. So I
Right.
had my belief system torn to bits, and I just
Oh,
kind of left it like that, because a belief system, you can believe whatever you want. It has zero effect on the truth. The truth is the truth. So I
sure.
think that's what we're left with a situation of each person having to go on their own personal journey of search and discovery and knowledge.
Okay.
And you
Well,
have
well,
to
thank
be
you.
open to all what you think of being true as not. But at some point, you build a level of knowledge and you start to build up from there. Going through college, I remember how interesting it was
Uh-huh.
that, okay, now I know all the literary aspects of this, the philosophical aspects, the scientific aspects, sociological, the biological aspects. It all came together to build a worldview. But then again, I was taking anthropology and I thought, well, modern humans are 40,000 years old. No way, they're 50,000. No way, let's move that back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's, you have to be flexible.
Hmm. Okay. So what it sounds like to me is that you have built what you feel that you know is a certain worldview based on what scientists have said that you find credible and unbiased. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. But
Cool.
ultimately, m- my knowledge that I know comes solely from personal experience. What I know, what I remember, what I've been able to find out. Because you can do experiments on, does heat expand? You can prove this. What's the melting
True.
point of? I love chemistry because of that. That's what I love
Oh,
about
cool.
science, because you
Yeah.
can't dispute it. You can actually, 2 plus 2 is going to equal 4, no matter how many times you do it.
Correct.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
So I, you were talking about science and the like provability. I'm the kind of person where, let's say that you and I go into the kitchen and we want to find out at what temperature water is boiling, right? So we have a thermometer and we um boil the water, we stick the thermometer in, we get the reading. What it boils at like what 212, right? Oh my God, I should know this. I'm sorry. Is that right?
I believe, I think so. Yeah, I should know that too. Yeah,
Actually, it's so silly.
212, I think.
So yeah. So we go and we get the reading, whatever it might be. And I'm the kind of person where you would accept that reading, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would test it. I mean, that's something that we do know really well, but there's variations there depending on what altitude you're at, you know,
Yes.
and little things can change that. Um,
True. True.
Someone once tried to tell me, they were like, "Did you know if you put hot water into an ice cube tray, it will freeze faster?" I'm like, "You're out of your mind." No, it won't.
But I don't know. That doesn't seem logical to me.
No, and it's not because it's not true.
Okay. Okay.
But you can
I
test it.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I'm like, how does that make any kind of sense? But I've not tested it, so I don't know. But um but you would trust the measurement device. Yeah, like if we went to boil some water, you would trust the measurement device, right?
Oh, well, sure. If I saw the water was boiling because we know from repeated testing what water boils at, and if it gave the
Yeah.
correct measurement, yes, I would
So
trust it.
I Cool. I completely agree with that in theory, but the way that my brain works is that I say, okay, how do I know that this instrument is calibrated correctly? And then my mind goes to thinking that it's just a subjective judgment or assignment of a number. And what if it's somehow objectively wrong in some way? So that's why I said I appreciate that you've got a lot more trust than I do because it's completely opposite to how I think. But I don't know. Thank you for indulging me in that in that experiment. So you said that you have a book that came out just this past year, and I would really love to hear about it. Could you tell me more?
Yeah, sure. Appreciate that. Thanks, Tilly. It's called Humanoids and High Strangeness,
Ooh.
and I love, writing and researching about people who've had direct contact. Because, like I said, I think that's where you will get the answers.
Yes.
There's a lot of people out there on television, say scientists and pundits and commentators, who are giving all this their belief on what they
Mhm.
think is going on. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Have you done the research? Have you talked to people? Have you
Yeah.
experienced it yourself?
Yeah.
So, and I think that the contactee phenomena, people who've had direct contact with ETs,
Mhm.
that's where you're going to get the truth. And if you interview them enough times, you start to realize, okay, these all corroborate each other. Here's people who don't know each other. They're saying the same thing. They have
Mhm.
witnesses, they have physical evidence, photographs, what have you.
Yeah.
And that book is a collation of 20 different accounts from people all over the world who've had
Oh,
direct contact, either being taken on board or seeing ETs face to face, something along
awesome.
those lines, and all
Mhm.
different types of humanoids. People who look like us, little grays, little blue beings, tall whites, reptilian,
Oh,
praying
wow.
mantis type, you name it. Bigfoot even, Bigfoot slipped in there. A little
Bigfoot
elk,
on the UFO.
not on the UFO, though there are some scattered reports where these two phenomena do intersect.
Yeah.
That's super rare. I have a couple of cases myself. It certainly has happened. But
Oh,
yeah, one guy I interviewed saw a little elf being in his home in Colorado 6 or 7 times. And
wow.
not an ET, this was something else.
Mhm.
It was a little short being, bald with a button nose and big eyes, and wore a little short jacket and blue pants and leather boots and was very happy and jovial and playful.
Aw.
And yeah, with the witness was a little kid at the time, 5 years old.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
says he had 6 visitations. One time, two of them came. So these are the kind of stories I really enjoy writing about, because when people have
Aw.
direct contact, this is the very heart of the
Yes.
UFO phenomenon. This is where when someone is face to face with a being, or they're taken on board, the chances of misperception, which is a real problem, go down to pretty much zero, because you are
Mhm.
enveloped in it. I mean, you're there to see it,
Right.
taste it, feel it, touch it.
Yeah.
It's all around you. You're encased in it.
Yes.
And that's where we get all the answers to this many questions surrounding all of this. Like you said,
Yeah.
who are they? Are they interdimensional? Why are they here? What is it
Yeah.
like to have contact? How do we know this is real? So that's what that book focuses on. And
That
I,
is really cool.
yeah, and I've got the subtitle High Humanoids and High Strangeness, because there is a lot of paranormal stuff that goes on with these, that in a
Right.
lot of the books, who are really trying hard to be just nuts and bolts, and let's just get,
Mhm.
let's not talk about the fact that these guys are walking through walls or levitating,
Right.
or people are having, psychic premonitions or astral projection, or seeing ghosts and shadow people and mediumship and levitating,
Yeah.
which is not any way of gathering knowledge. You have to look at all the evidence first,
Yeah.
then you build the theory, not vice versa,
I
which so many
I
people are doing.
I completely
You know what
agree.
I mean? I call it shoe fitting and cherry picking. They're like, well, let's prove these are time travelers, and they'll pick only the evidence that they think supports that scenario. That's
I
not
agree.
science. That's not.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. So, do you want to hear a really interesting interdimensional Bigfoot story?
Sure, yeah. I've written about a book on Bigfoot. Bigfoot is real. I got kicked into that, kicking and screaming too. I didn't believe. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I'm afraid
oh
it
no.
might be real. So let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, I would love to hear.
Awesome. So, I'm a retired professional paranormal investigator and a retired professional paranormal counselor.
Wow.
And yep. So there was one case that I worked in Northeast Ohio several years ago. And this long-term landowner he'd always had some paranormal events on the property with the woods, in the house where the woods were, I'm sorry, and in the house, which was situated in the woods or like right on the edge of it, it was kind of in a clearing. Well, he'd always had these events with his family, but they were fewer and farther in between, and they were much milder. And over like a sudden 6 month period, it really picked up. So no one was getting hurt. There was nothing like negative. They were just afraid. There were sightings of, you could say, forest guardians, shadow people. There were a few UFO sightings, apparently, will o' the wisp. There was like a good assortment of basically everything. And then my my client, he was a man roughly in his late 40s. He said that the most intense experience that he'd had ever on this property, and what spurred him to seek help, is that he was out. I forget what he said he was doing in the woods one late, I think it was late afternoon, like around dusk or whatever. He said that he was out and he witnessed a massive, somewhere between 7 and 8 foot tall, muscular Bigfoot in the oak tree grove. He said that he witnessed this Bigfoot walk face first into a large oak tree and be absorbed into it.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories. I know
Or
about this.
what do you think of that?
Yeah. Well, when I first started researching Bigfoot, I kind of assumed we're dealing with a primate who is clearly physical, because you can smell it. It leaves footprints. It
Sure.
roars. The animals are hearing it. Uh, there's hair samples. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming that it's real. And as you gather cases and firsthand testimony, especially talking to people, it becomes
Yeah.
clear that at least some of them
Hmm.
are intelligent, very intelligent, sentient. You know,
Yes.
this is perhaps not in every single case because there's clearly
Yeah.
different types.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
I started to get cases which had paranormal or interdimensional aspects to them.
Mhm.
My very first case, the guy said, I was in telepathic communication with this Bigfoot. I'm like, you're kidding me. He's like, no, no, I knew what it was thinking. It hated my dogs. It knew what I was thinking. And
That's
we were
very
linked.
common, the hatred of dogs.
Yeah, I found that
Mhm.
out. Stone throwing, vocalization, there's all this stuff that's very consistent in these reports.
Mhm.
But I started getting some paranormal. I mean, one guy said he had a Bigfoot up here in front of him, out of thin air.
Really?
Yes, and it started communicating with
Oh.
him telepathically and says,
Uh-huh.
"Yeah, I'm like you. I have a family." And his wife or
Oh.
female appeared, and then a
Uh-huh.
child Bigfoot. And they said, "Yes, we have the ability to travel interdimensionally, as you would
Oh,
think of it."
wow. Uh-huh.
And there are cases where people will see them walk through solid objects.
Yep. Yep.
So I think, and this speaks to why very few physical remains, if any,
I agree.
have been found, or because people will shoot at them point blank and it disappears in a blaze of light. I mean,
Yes.
there's cases of kind of, well, I don't like to call it shape shifting, but it's essentially, yeah, them changing form,
Uh-huh.
which is much more rare, certainly. But absolutely, I think that they have a understanding of the other dimensions like the ETs do. And I
Mm.
think this is why
Okay.
sometimes these two phenomena intersect.
Yes.
Because every now and then you do hear someone who sees a UFO land and a Bigfoot is right there, or
Yeah.
cases of them going into a craft or out of, super rare, but it does happen. And I think Bigfoot, Sasquatch, call it what you will, in some cases is a contactee, like, any person who's in contact with them. And that's what we're seeing. I don't think they're extraterrestrial. And
Gotcha.
they're interdimensional, yeah. But like I said, if you were to meditate and live in a cave like these holy people who've done, because I wrote
Hmm.
a book on levitation. We have the ability to levitate. This is in every culture across our planet.
Can you
We're,
teach me?
I wish I could. I have not been able to do it, but I
Oh.
certainly
Oh.
dove deep into all the techniques that people
Okay.
have. In every culture, they approach it differently. In medieval Europe, the nuns and monks and priests would just meditate on the holiness of God. And at some point, they reached that level of ecstasy or communion where they would literally rise up in the air. There are so many
Yeah.
accounts of this. Whereas in the Eastern cultures, India and Tibet, they have specific breathing techniques and visualizations and meditations and yogic techniques, pranayama and so forth, that
Right.
can lead you right to it. Very specific inhalations for this amount, holding your breath, retention,
Mm.
exhalation, all timed perfectly to bring
Yes.
about this state. Every culture had, even Native Americans learned how to do it.
Really? Oh, I
So,
didn't know that. I thought it
yeah,
was mostly an Eastern thing.
every culture,
Oh.
and there's modern day accounts. I've interviewed some people who've done it. Marilyn Hughes, she had two experiences.
Huh.
Dolly Saffron, the person I wrote a book about,
Okay.
I asked her because I had found a bunch of contactees who experienced physical levitation. It's just kind of
Mhm.
on a lark while I'm doing the book. I asked her,
Oh,
I don't suppose you've ever levitated. And she kind of smiled. I'm like, well, yeah, actually. Most people won't talk about it because who's going to believe you,
I
for
believe
one
you.
thing?
Sure.
But this is something we can do. We can levitate. We can do precognition, astral
Yes,
projection, mediumship,
I agree. I completely.
telekinesis. These are they're not supernatural. This is not paranormal. We only call it that because we don't understand the mechanisms behind it.
I
It's
am
not
with you.
breaking the laws of the universe.
Mm-mm.
we just don't understand it. But so many people have done this. Levitation, by the way, has been proven, underlined in a laboratory setting at least 4 times that I know of.
Really?
Hmm.
Can you name the studies so that people in the audience can maybe look that up, and maybe so I can look it up too? Shoot.
Yeah, well, Hereward Carrington was a scientist in the 1900s who
Okay.
decided to try what we call finger levitation. Light as a feather, light
Yeah,
as
yeah,
air.
yeah. That's a party game these days, right?
Right. And I talk
Yeah.
to people like, oh yeah, we experienced it. I'm like, well, okay. But this guy decided to get a bunch of people together, 4 or 5, put a person on a chair and 4 people around them on a large scale, which held all of them. So he could know their exact weight. And together, under laboratory settings, he weighed them, and it was several hundred pounds, as you would expect, with well,
Sure.
5 people, a guy in a chair, a wooden chair, a guy in a chair, and 4 people around them.
Mhm.
And he then had them do rhythmic breathing, in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out for a minute or two, and then had them lift the person up. And the first time he did he measured a loss of weight of about 42 pounds. And the
Whoa.
second time he did it, it was 37. And then it was 43. And then it was 39. And it was always within that range over and over and over again. So that's one study. There was another study by Baron Schrenk-Notzing of France, who worked with the 2 mediums, Willie and Rudy Schneider, who were
Okay.
young boys who had the ability to levitate.
Really? Huh.
And he was able to get them to levitate over and over again in front of scientists. And there was that other medium, Eusapia Palladino, who went across Europe convincing scientists, Nobel Prize winners, inventors, people who were
Oh,
very high level scientists,
yeah.
because she was able to levitate as well. This happened in
Really?
Brazil as well with Carmine Mirabelli, Brazil's most famous medium.
Hmm.
Could speak like 40 different languages, dead languages. Actually, I think it was like 200. I heard it.
Oh
I'd
my
have to
God.
look it up, but he could speak languages he didn't know in a trance state.
Yeah.
And they put him in a room. He was all tied up. All the scientists were seated around. This guy lifted up and went through the wall, solid, in front of scientists, convinced them. So there
Wow.
are experiments that have been done over and over again. And I wish there was more funding and attention paid to this sort of thing, because this is groundbreaking stuff. This
I
is
agree. And I
amazing.
wonder maybe there's some type of like sabotage or cover up going on around that, because if everyone knew that that was a possible human ability, I think that that would change human society entirely. What about you though? What do you think?
Exactly. And I think this is tied very closely to the UFO cover up and the folks who
Ah,
are behind it. Call them what you will, the cabal, I think is probably an accurate term. People at very high levels within government, but not necessarily government, who are doing everything in their power to mislead, to poison us, essentially, with fluoride and pesticides and genetically modified food. And try
I do
going,
agree. Mhm.
yeah, try going shopping. Look at the ingredients and see if you can find food that's not genetically modified.
It's pretty
Right?
bad at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a concerted campaign to dumb us down with fear and
Yeah.
misinformation. The media is so fear-based that we don't trust each other at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Divisive too.
very divisive.
Yeah.
And we're all one. This is the message the ETs tell people over and over again.
I agree. Yeah, all of the non-human people that I've ever met have said that they are energetic empaths, which means that biologically they are one with everyone that is around them, whether that is human, non-human, um, possibly even like animals like dogs and cats, that they are in exact tune with other people biologically, energetically. and that they feel everything and they know all of that. There was once someone who said that the non-human, less physical people have perfect knowledge, but without much ability to act physically here. You know what I mean? But that human people are the opposite in that they have a lot of physical ability with imperfect knowledge or imperfect understanding and wisdom. And I think maybe that could be true in a lot of cases. What about you?
Well, it's exactly what this one lady, a contactee from the East Coast, told me. That because
Really?
she asked the ETs about that, and they're like, "Yeah, you guys are very grounded in physical reality. We're
Yeah,
much less grounded, and this is
right.
one of the reasons we're interested in your genetics, because we're
Yeah,
trying to bring
I
some
agree.
of that back." And they
Yeah,
said, "It's very hard for us to be." She asked them, "Are you planning on taking over the planet?" And they said, "No, no, no,
no,
no. It's your planet is far too crowded. It's too polluted, and you are very hard to be around
I
because
agree. Mhm.
your emotions are so coarse and negative."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's consistently what I keep hearing from a lot of non-human people, especially the more benign ones who would like to help humanity. The coarse negative emotions and the selfishness keeps coming up over and over and over again. And I think that until those things are upgraded in human individuals, that can then offer a lighter vibrational familial line, I think unfortunately that a lot of humanity is doomed to repeat itself. Does that make sense?
Think that's one of the reasons we keep coming down here is to learn love,
Yeah,
compassion, allowing truth and honesty to guide our actions. And this is one of the obstacles towards open official disclosure
I
because
agree.
they can't come down here if we're going to shoot at them and try,
Yeah,
we've got such problems with interpersonal relationships here among ourselves that
exactly.
it would be a disaster for them to try to, interact with us. Because
Yeah.
we are most I think we're getting a lot better. I know I'm ready. I feel like humanity is growing fast spiritually.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm
Cool.
really pleased to see that, there's a lot more attention being paid to, equality and things like this, that we are all equal, we are all one. Uh, Most people are kind people. They will give you the shirt off their back once they get to know you. But that's the problem. We need to get to know each other and understand that we are all one. And this is one of the main ET agendas. They're
Hmm.
working so hard on several levels. One, to just let people know they're here. So they're
Yeah,
doing what amounts to a publicity campaign, a grassroots publicity campaign.
I agree.
But they're also trying real hard, working with people who are doing good for humanity. So you see a lot of contactees are environmentalists, they're human rights activists, they're
Sure.
teachers, they're nurses,
Yep.
they're social workers.
Mhm.
It's so interesting because you look at the contactees, and as you were saying, empathy. Contactees are very empathetic. They have
Yeah.
this amazing relationship with animals, with
Mhm.
the environment. Every single one of them has these amazing animal stories, almost without exception. So this speaks towards, who the ETs are contacting. It's people who are spiritually elevating themselves,
Yeah, I
psychically
agree.
elevating themselves,
I
morally
agree.
elevating themselves.
I agree. And I would feel so bad for any empathetic, like emotionally empathetic non-human person who came to human society and tries to fit in here. You're right. I think it would be a complete disaster. And then God forbid if they tried to, like to mate and marry with a human person with the psychological differences, the moral differences, and the emotional differences. I see almost no way that with how humanity is right now and how a lot of non-human people seem to be, it does seem like there's a big wall of separation. And I do hope that over time, um, everyone can, if they are willing, reunite as family. You know what I mean?
I'm not. So I'm an idealist.
Yeah.
I kind of look on the bright side of things, and I think progress is inevitable. sooner or later you're going to progress or you're not. You're going
Okay.
to go down into, this evil
Yeah.
side, which we do see people making very poor decisions and learning the hard way over and
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully at some point they'll realize, you know what? It's not a good idea to steal or hurt. Because if you study near-death experiences, for example,
Hmm.
there's something called the life review. When
I've
you
heard.
It's so interesting. I interviewed this one guy who had a life review who had lived a wrong life. He didn't
Mm,
really want to talk about anything else except his life review because there's a lot to a near-death experience. And he said his
oh.
life review, he had to feel every person he ever hurt, feel what
Hmm.
they felt.
Hmm.
It was gut-wrenching. It almost killed him because not only did he have to feel how he hurt that person, those people that he hurt would go on and hurt other people because of how he hurt them. So
Yeah.
there was this rippling,
Yeah.
fractaling effect, going out.
Yeah. And
And
so
he was,
he had to feel both levels of that.
yeah, all levels, because it went out in
Wow.
repeating waves. So this
Mm,
is how important our actions are.
yeah, I
And,
agree.
and you will learn this, when you go. This is why I always encourage people to learn astral projection, because you will see how closely tied we are to each other, and it will help you to
Mhm.
psychically and spiritually and morally and ethically awaken and realize that thoughts are things. Everything you
Yeah.
think goes out
Yeah.
there. Everything you do has consequences that go far beyond what you think, whether it's a simple smile
I
or,
agree.
an act of unkindness.
I agree. I think that everything has some kind of karmic ripple or karmic effect. And I do believe that at some point it's going to come back to the person who made the action. And whether that is someone feeling the effects of it or it's in long term consequences, like losing a marriage or losing a job that actually was really great, something like that, where you can't get these things back. I do think that there are major consequences in that way that might be permanent in some ways. And so when I talk to people, I talk a lot about mindfulness and about what I call choosing your own adventure. And that's really what it's about is it's literally mindfulness and choosing how someone is going to respond and being open-minded to the possibility that someone could be wrong or mistaken and there might be a different objective reality or other factors to consider that could help someone make a better or healthier choice. And even in dealing with non-human people who are technically parasites, so non-human people who are here um, to essentially energetically suck off of human people who are living a really nasty, abusive, low vibration life, that's still their message that they are here because of the food being put out. And if they would like this essentially consequence to stop, the answer is to choose love and to take responsibility for the contributions that one is making to this very low vibration environment. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. There's
Cool.
negative spirits out there for sure. I've
Yeah, yeah.
encountered them doing out of body experiences.
Ah, gotcha.
Earthbound souls is a real problem. And if you
Mhm.
get good at astral projection at some point, you're going to be kind of enlisted, if you will, to bring people over to the other side because it's a real problem here. And this is one of the reasons for all the negativity because there
Yeah,
are people who are suffering and are very, they die and they don't even know it. Some do, but some don't. And
yeah.
they're
Oh, I've heard
wallowed in anger and
that.
lust and hunger and negativity and anger. I already said anger, but
Rage, maybe.
it bears repeating because it's a real problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I,
yeah, there are absolute bad spirits out there uh,
I
wreaking havoc.
yeah. I personally, I don't call them bad. I don't think that they're bad at all. I think that that is just a subjective judgment, and I think that they actually play a really vital role in human evolution. But I don't know. That's just my
Well,
opinion.
I kind of look upon it as we're all kind of flowers trying to bloom, and some are just not blooming right now. They're still locked up in that little bud that's waiting for the right sunlight and
Oh,
water
yeah,
to open them up. We're all on a pathway of, inevitably, I think we will progress as an entity, but sometimes it takes people some really tough lessons. And I agree,
yeah,
they're people at their core, but I also think some people do make the wrong decision and they keep continue to, and over again, and they're going down that pathway that is just not good. They've chosen evil. So
yeah,
I'm not going to underestimate evil. If you study the history of humanity, you will see the atrocities that people have committed to each other.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I agree. So what do you think about the idea of NPCs, human people who um they have no kind of free will and there's no soul inhabiting the body for that lifetime? Do you think that that's possibly something that it's kind of like a background character who's there to just fulfill a role? Do you think that's a possibility?
I have no evidence of that. No, like I said, I can't discount anything, but I have never had any reason to believe
Okay.
that that's true.
Completely fair. I was just curious if you thought that maybe it could be a possibility, but if the evidence doesn't bear out for you, then it seems reasonable to me to say that no, you don't think it's a possibility. Am I understanding properly?
I'm never going to say no. I feel like anything is possible. It's an infinite
Oh,
universe. You know
yeah,
what I mean? I mean,
yeah,
anything is possible. But I don't see any evidence of that. So that's kind of
cool.
where I'm at.
That makes sense to me. So we are coming to the end of the show, my dear, but I know that you've written several books. Could you please tell us the title of each of them?
Sure. I probably couldn't tell you everyone because I've got 31. So,
Oh shoot, I'm so sorry.
but I can tell you a few of my favorites, certainly. Um,
Yes, your favorites and then your most recent one,
yeah,
please.
I love Humanoids and High Strangeness, which we already talked about, and Symmetry, a true UFO adventure. Certainly a couple of my favorites. I love those books I've written about people who've had contacts such as inside UFOs or onboard UFO experiences. I
Okay.
love the book I wrote about healings, the healing power of UFOs. I also wrote one about UFOs over schoolyards, schoolyard UFO encounters.
That's a
Love
big
that one.
thing. Yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
They're showing themselves to children intentionally. It's a
Oh,
very
yeah.
interesting thing. But
Mhm.
written about ghosts. I wrote a book called Human Levitation. I wrote one about my own out of body experiences. It's the only autobiographical book I've written. So that's called Out of Body Exploring.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, a bunch of books on the UFO subject, a couple on Bigfoot, some on ghosts, all different paranormal subjects. But yeah, on board UFO encounters, inside UFOs, symmetry, those are probably my favorite. And also the Not From Here series about unusual UFO encounters. I've written 4 books in a series. Soon
Oh
to do
my.
number 5. So
You
yeah,
are quite the writer. That's awesome.
that's my mission. I was kind of born into it. I knew from a very young age, even before I believed in any of this stuff. Or I should say, knew about this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew I
Hey,
was going
I
to
mean,
do something
if
along
you're,
those lines.
yeah, if that's where you're drawn and you're good at it, why not? Go for it. That's
Yeah,
what
I think we should all follow our excitement. Do what draws you. Have fun with life. That's why we're here.
I agree. Completely agree. All right, my dear. So, for people who would like to get in touch with you and or find your website if you have one, where can they get all of that?
Yeah, thanks, Tilly. I appreciate that. It's pretty easy. If you just punch my name in on the internet, Preston Dennett, it'll take you to my YouTube channel, my website. My books
Uh,
are available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
that's my
I'm
next
easy
question.
to contact through my website or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. That's about the limit of my social media at this point.
Aw.
But yeah, I really appreciate you having me on the show. I feel like these are important subjects, and it's
Yeah.
time people recognize that there's more out there than just us.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that, and I think that having these types of talks, whether it's me or someone else, I think it is crucial to get this information and these thoughts out there. And I really appreciate that you're part of that because I do think that you have, well, I mean, obviously there's a great writing talent that you bring to this, and you are addressing some really tough topics here. So I genuinely thank you for your service in that way, sir.
Thank you very much. Much
Mm,
appreciated. Thank you.
my pleasure. All right, everyone. Until next time, I have been Tillie Treadwell, and this is my friend Preston Dennett. We wish you a very merry morning or a marvelously magical midnight. Until next time.